Hello ladies and gentlemen, this is Blue Maxima, and I want to talk to you for a bit about Project Wingman. And this is actually going to be a review this time, because, funnily enough, I've finished it, and I've put a fair few hours into the Conquest mode. So, I feel like I've seen everything there is to see, more or less, and I'm just going to say right now, if you hate me comparing games to other games, you probably want to close this video immediately, because the amount of times I'm going to say Ace Combat in this video is kind of insane. It feels like an Ace Combat clone. Project Wingman feels like an Ace Combat clone, but when you say the word clone, you imply that the thing that is doing the cloning is worse than the thing it's trying to clone. But the thing is, Project Wingman is so damn good, it's almost as good as the regular Ace Combats, if not better, in some areas. It is legitimately impressive what, like, 3 dudes managed to do. Now, there is a fair bit of voice acting talent, and there are a couple of people who helped out with, like, art and stuff along those lines, right? But the majority of this game was developed by 3 people, as opposed to, like, the hundreds you would need on an Ace Combat team. Sure, it took them 3 years and a bunch of Kickstarter money, but I gotta tell you, man, they did a really impressive job. And as you can tell, I'm playing this on PC. As far as I know, this isn't going anywhere in terms of consoles, at least not for a while. So, alright, no problem with that. You've got plenty of options in the options menu. You've got tons of graphics settings. You've got FOV. You've got a bunch of ways to rebind your controls and to test them, which is nice because this game does support things like HOTAS, which is great. It also supports virtual reality, which I'll put a little bit of footage of in, like, the top right corner. I wasn't able to play too much of it because I had to play it via Oculus Link and it wasn't doing so well. It was kind of stuttering and stammering all over the place. And I'm not sure if that was the game's fault or Oculus Link's fault. And I also wasn't able to get any audio, which is why you're seeing it up in the top right instead of seeing, like, proper full-on footage. But it actually works really well. It works across the entire game. The only problem I have with the VR, just while I'm bringing it up, is that in the cockpit, there's no altimeter and speed meters. The entire cockpit is just one static thing except for the radar. Your hand doesn't even move the joystick, which is a little bit weird because it does when you're playing on normal flat screen, but whatever. That's honestly a kind of a minor thing, especially since you'll be focusing on literally everything else around you. So I'll let that one slide. The VR implementation is basically great. I am also playing this on a PlayStation 5 controller because thank you Steam Input. It just worked. Plugged it in, ran the game. Steam was like, oh, you're playing on a PlayStation 5 controller. I'm just going to remap all your controllers like a 360 pad, and it worked. So, nice, comfy little experience. So let's talk about the actual game, now that we've actually started. So, you fly planes. Duh, it's called Project Wingman. What do you expect? And you go around, you shoot people, and you shoot ground targets, you follow your orders given to you, but in the briefing cutscenes, which are actually surprisingly well done for how low a budget this game had, it doesn't have proper quote-unquote cutscenes with, like, actual people, like the animated cutscenes in Ace Combat 4 or 5. No, it was only 5, wasn't it? So, it is a little bit lower on the presentation scale when it comes to it's a little bit lower on the presentation scale when it comes to the cutscenes. But when it comes to the actual look of the fucking game, holy shit, son. This game looks gorgeous. Now, there are some, like, little details that you'll notice are a little bit wrong if you look a little bit hard when you're not flying past at, like, 1000K. But it legitimately looks amazing. The cloud effects are gorgeous. The skyboxes are fantastic. The plane models are great. The quality of, like, some weather effects that are going on, and I'll be showing you some of them later on in this video footage. It all looks fantastic. All of the effects, all of everything is just... If you're all paying attention to the virtual reality footage that I had in the top right corner of the screen there, you would have noticed all of the different, like, smoke trails and cloud partings and stuff that's going on when a bunch of planes are all flying around in the same area. It all also looks fantastic. So, it's legitimately just an absolutely gorgeous game. And it runs, well enough. I mean, I managed to get somewhere along the lines of 120 frames a second with everything on, I think it was high settings. but for the purpose of not making my computer sound like it's about to die, I cut it back to 60 frames per second limit, stuck it on epic everything. That's what you're seeing in this footage. The game's still responsive enough without it, and again, it still manages to look gorgeous even on high. And also, gotta say, just while my mind's on it, this soundtrack is kicking. It's so good. It's legitimately like someone listened to Ace Combat and was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. And I can even point out some of the examples that they might have used. Like, there are a couple of tracks in this game where someone obviously just binge listened to Zero, the track from Ace Combat Zero specifically, known as Zero, and then made a couple of songs based off that. There's this one mission called Cold War, which is actually the one that you saw in the virtual reality footage, where the song that plays is... The first thing I thought when I heard the first few notes of it was Liberation of Grace Maria from Ace Combat 6. It is legitimately so close that I was starting to get worried that Namco might sue. Now, it's a different composition, and the instruments aren't the same, but it just sounds so similar and gives the same sort of atmosphere that it's actually really impressive. And the same thing is duplicated across the game's entire soundtrack, not to mention it sounds bloody great. It's got all the sorts of high-paced intensity that you would hope for in this kind of game, and honestly, they're just bangers to listen to. Hell, I'm going to get a couple of the songs from the soundtrack and stick them in my usual music playlist, because this is legitimately great. And you're not going to be able to hear it until I shut the fuck up and let the gameplay footage play out for a bit, but yeah, it is basically if Ace Combat was done by a different set of musicians. And it works, because of course it does, because it's a plane flying game. They knew exactly what the hell they were doing, and it was great. It was absolutely great. What's also great about the audio is the dudes that you're talking to, at least throughout the campaign. In Conquest, they don't really come up that much. You get a couple of canned voice lines taken straight from the campaign that basically have nothing to do with anything. They're just kind of generic lines and that's it. But in the campaign, they absolutely do recreate that feeling of the Ace Combat games, where you've got all your wingmen talking to each other, you've got units on the ground, you can tap into the enemy's comms and listen to what they have to say, and it's done in exactly the same way as Ace Combat, where everybody's that little bit snarky until it gets serious, and then everybody's serious. You can feel the camaraderie going on between everybody, and it absolutely communicates that at-war atmosphere that Ace Combat was always so good at. Because the one thing about Ace Combat that made it stand above every other arcade game of its type, even games like Hawks, was that it was absolutely glorious at creating a sort of Battlefront atmosphere where there are tons of people all over the place. There's planes flying around in the sky, there's tanks and boats in the water, and they're all purposefully attacking each other. They are at battle, and they are constantly chattering back and forth with each other. And then here you come, like a hot knife through butter, and slice right through and completely wipe out one side of the freshly cut... I was going to say loaf of butter for a minute there. That would have been silly, but no, stick of butter. So, the game's atmosphere is just top-notch. And of course, it's thanks to the graphical fidelity and the way that the people talk back and forth to each other, but also the mission design. Because there are enemies everywhere. They will constantly spawn in new units. They have bases that you need to go and destroy that have tons of things just lined up for you to take out as you so please. They have just little weird voice lines and little weird details out of the middle of nowhere. Like, there's this one detail which I absolutely adore, and I'm just going to not so much spoil a moment from later on in the campaign, but I'm going to talk about one of the voice lines. And they did not have to do this. I would not have been annoyed in any way, but it brought the entire game up a notch to see this. So, in this one mission where you're fighting to take over a city, and it's kind of unexpected, you've launched like a surprise attack. There's this one little target way out in the middle of nowhere, and you've been told that yellow targets are civilian targets, so I just ignored it and I went for all the other targets, right? And then someone piped up, "Hey, do you guys see that yacht out there?" And I went and looked, and it was a yacht. And they just had a little bit of a back and forth discussion about how there was this poor guy out in the bay on his yacht watching all of these planes fly over the city. And it was the funniest damn thing. I guess it's something that you kind of have to experience, but there are a couple of just little moments like that that really just add that little extra bit of flavor to the atmosphere that I got going on here. It helps keep the tone as light as it needs to be, at least at that point in the game anyway, because trust me, it does get serious. But yes, the atmosphere, whether it be the way that they lay things out on the map, the way that the maps are constructed, and the maps actually do look good. The only real disadvantage I would say they have is that the ground textures are a little bit low res. They could do to be a bit higher resolution in order to hide the fact that they're kind of repetitive, but that's pretty much all I've got in the way of that. So yeah, in the campaign, you do recycle like an area once or twice, but they usually put you in a completely different corner. Like, for example, in one mission earlier on where you have to go take out an entire navy, you are below the clouds, you're in this storm, it looks absolutely gorgeous, and it's constantly pelting down rain, there's lightning everywhere. It's a fantastic looking map. Then later on in the campaign in Cold War, they put you on the same map, but they put you way above the clouds, so they do a good job of recycling what they already have without making it too obvious. And as a result, the campaign is just great all the way through. The atmosphere is top-notch and on point. The voice acting is exactly what you expect if you play Ace Combat before. A little bit of like the voice equivalent of jank, but it actually sounds a fair bit better than most of the Ace Combat actors. I could not tell you why, but it's just true. The mission design is really well done. I played it all the way through on hard, and I found that the difficulty was actually pretty consistent all the way through. There were a couple of missions that gave me trouble until I realized that, oh, I need to be really quick if I want to avoid getting those 15 planes up my ass. So let's just avoid that for the time being. And there were a couple other missions. The final boss in particular, which, again, I won't spoil anything, but it is an absolute visual masterpiece. He's also really annoying to beat, though, because he has this annoying tendency to go against everything you've been taught in the game up to this point. So I'll give you a little hint for him if you decide to pick this game up, and I'll just spoil it right now. You absolutely should. This game's amazing. Take along a plane that can do nothing but gun pods and machine gun the fuck out of him. Just brrr out of him. It makes the boss fight so much easier. At the very end of it, like, your HUD disappears, so I thought to myself, oh, I must be made invincible or something. No, you go through like this 10-minute boss fight, and then you're still vulnerable in this last countdown thing, and I managed to die like three times right at the very end of the boss fight, and I was so pissed by the end of it. Thank God I managed to find that way to kind of cheese him, otherwise I would have been stuck on the bloody campaign. But anyway, the Battlefront feel is excellent, the stage design is excellent, the voice acting is great. The story, now that's a bit of an interesting one, because as I said, there's no proper cutscenes. The only real cutscenes, quote unquote, you get are the briefings and everything that happens in the game, but they actually do a really good job of establishing a new world and atmosphere. Just to give you a brief overview of what the world in this game is like, the Pacific Ring of Fire erupted and basically destroyed civilization, but we managed to get back up on our feet, and now we're in the world of After Calamity. And even the lore feels a little bit Ace Combat, because After Calamity sounds like it's something exactly an Ace Combat game would use. But yeah, it's basically just an excuse for them to completely reshuffle the world and its factions, and that's fine. And the story itself is pretty straightforward. There's not too much in the way of major twists or turns, and you're more or less on the same side every single time, but they do have some great set pieces. They do have a fair few oh shit moments. They do have a good amount of interesting character development. It's just, that's pretty much all I've got to say on that part. The main highlight is your wingmen, who are constantly talking to you about random crap, and it's fun to listen to talk to them. Yeah, that's basically all I've got to say about it. They're fun to be around. All the other characters, not so much, but they tend to pop in and out of the story, like, no matter what you do. So, yeah, it's fine. It does the job nicely. Held up by the fact that there's some good voice acting going on. And the briefing cutscenes also look great too, because I'm pretty sure I took the time to show it off before this video got to this point, but there you go. What else is there to say about... Oh, I might as well talk about the actual playing feel, because I realize I haven't done that, and it's Ace Combat. That's basically all I've got to say. You've got speed up and slow down. You've got your left and your right. You roll with the left stick left and right. You point your nose up and down with up and down. You can invert all those controls if you so please, or change them. Your 4 weapon slots are assigned to your D-pad. Y swaps to the next target. That can be kind of annoying because it has this annoying tendency to not pick a target that's right in front of you for some reason. B fires off your special weapon. I believe it's A fires off your guns. What does X do again? No, I think it's... Man, I was literally just playing it. I was literally just playing Conquest. I don't know why I've gone and forgotten it. But yes, the controls are all really simple to get a hang of. The playing physics are very arcadey and somewhat forgiving, although you probably don't want to go at the ground too fast if you want to do a fast fly by of a ground target. Bloody tongue twisters, I tell ya. But yes, the planes are an absolute joy to fly, especially when you upgrade to some of the later ones, which are a lot faster to respond to your commands. One of the big problems with the Conquest, and I'll get on to Conquest, is that the plane that you start out with there feels like just a metal cylinder with a jet engine attached to the back of it. But once you get into the faster, snappier planes with higher quality weaponry in the campaign, because it works the same way as it does in Ace Combat, where the more planes you kill in a level, the more score you get, and that score gets converted directly into currency, which you can use to buy new planes. But yes, you can get new planes. They all have different weaponry loadouts. Thank you, Nee. Everything from multiple missiles that'll track multiple targets at once, missiles that are better at tracking, unguided bombs, machine guns of multiple kinds, all the pretty basic stuff. As far as I can tell, it's kind of hard to get any of the super weapon planes in this game. Like, there are a couple of planes that have rail guns attached to them, which look and sound amazing, but you can't use them, or at the very least you can't use them in the campaign to my knowledge. You do also have, what else do you have? You do also have liveries for your planes to make them look different, and you've also got flares. Right, that's it. Flares are on your X button. That's the one I was forgetting. No, flares are on your left click. I apologize. Oh, man. Left click of the analog stick, I mean. Although, again, this does support HOTAS. But yes, all the controls are very simple to immediately grasp. They are all rebindable. You can change things like the curves on the sticks and the dead zones as well, so that if you prefer things being really sensitive or really insensitive, you can do a little bit of both. And there are plenty of fun planes to fly with different weaponry, and they all feel great. It feels great being able to easily swerve between buildings, or follow a plane around in a one-on-one dogfight where he's constantly trying to stay ahead of you, but you're just gaining on him. Or just firing out 8 missiles at once and getting 4 kills and 2 wounds. It's just, it's an immense joy to fly, and it helps with plenty of different environmental sound effects, so you can hear planes and missiles flying by. That's another thing I like about this heads-up display, actually, is the way that it shows you incoming missiles. You get this triangle in a 3D space, in a circle around the middle of your HUD, and it tells you exactly where the missile is coming from and how close it is. So you're very easily able to avoid it if you know what you're doing. And I was actually quite good at it by the end of the game. One other thing I'll talk about is the virtual reality mode, though. The heads-up display on that can be a little bit annoying, especially when it comes to the campaign, because there are a few things that just kind of decides to stick right in the middle of the screen. Like, you can kind of see-ish here on the, on the flat screen mode. It's okay, because the heads-up display is, like, right in the middle. It's not massively getting in the way of anything, and a lot of it is usually, like, off to the side, where you can't see stuff anyway. That's fine, but when you're playing in virtual reality, this heads-up display follows you around, so if you're trying to see something and all this heads-up display stuff is getting in the way, it can just kind of be annoying when you're craning your head trying to see something that's flying next to you, only for this heads-up display to get in the way. You're supposed to have the ability to turn it off, and it would be better if it was like Star Wars Squadrons, where all of the stuff on the cockpit worked, even if it was just like really generic stuff, just so they could easily copy-paste it between cockpits or something. It would be better than this heads-up display. But still, overall, the campaign is great. It's got 21 missions, and the overall time to complete it is like 20 to 30 minutes per mission, although I ended up failing a fair few times for differing reasons. So I ended up spending something like 6 to 7 hours in the campaign, which is pretty damn reasonable, especially since you can go through it again on like legendary difficulty. No, it's mercenary difficulty. I think it says you are legendary in the difficulty select screen. So yeah, you've got a fair amount of replayability there. But then you come to the Conquest mode. Now, the campaign mode is quite well cooked. Other than a couple of like subtitles that are a little bit off, other than that, it's really well done. It's got a lot of engaging scenarios, it's got interesting missions, plenty of different planes to buy and fly, and all of the chit-chat, and just a good level of difficulty in order to make it interesting. Conquest is a little bit different because it is a roguelite style mode. So the way it works is you've got the world map post-calamity laid out in front of you, and you need to take it territory by territory. And each one of these missions, each one of these territories is a mission. And these different missions involve, say, finding a special set of planes and taking it down, finding a set of airships and taking them down, finding some ground targets and taking them down. It's basically kill something, or in the case of score attack, it's kill everything as fast as you can. At the end of most of these, when you finish the first, mission objective, they'll often spawn in a bunch of powerful enemies for you to take down, and when you've taken them down, you win and you move on. And you get two different kinds of currencies for this. Your regular points, which you can use to buy AI companions, but your AI companions will disappear along with all your progress on the map if you die once. So you need to be quite careful about that. And you also get prestige points, which carry over between game to game, and you can use them to buy different planes. So you buy them in the same way you do in the campaign mode. You pick them up, you pick your weapons, and then you go. And of course, as you expect from a roguelite mode, they are all procedurally generated in some way. They tend to take place in the same maps for the same territories, but every time it's a relatively new mission at the very least. And the way it works is you get dropped in with all your AI companions, and then everything is spawned in around you. But they only spawn in a few things at a time. So for example, let's say there are 4 jets flying around the outskirts of the map that I need to take out. But when you spawn in, you're in like an equal distance between all of them. So you have to pick which one you want to go for, and you spawn in with no one next to you. And then as you start flying, enemies in planes and stuff on the ground will start spawning in around you. And it will keep spawning in as the game goes on. So they will consistently be generating quote-unquote new combat scenarios by just spawning stuff in around you and expecting you to deal with it in whatever way it is deemed necessary. The only downside to this approach, though, is everything starts feeling kind of similar, because there aren't that many kinds of missions, and they are, for the most part, the same thing. Take down this thing. Take down this thing, take down this thing, but it's got a few more guns on it than your regular plane. Fight a set of boss planes, and then that's it. That's pretty much the entirety of every single mission, and it can start to get a little bit repetitive. What keeps it difficult, though, is that you've got an alert meter, which slowly climbs up over time. So the more that you spend in one particular mission, the more, it continues up throughout the entire game, and it's persistent across missions, but the longer you spend in a mission, the harder it's going to be later on. So you need to be keeping as many of your dudes alive as possible. You need to be taking out enemies as quickly as you can, but you also need to be taking out as many enemies as you can in order to get enough score to spawn a bunch of different AI types to help you out along the way. And it's a interesting mode, and it does at least do the job of giving you something a little bit extra to do after the campaign. But as I said before, just due to the way that it works, with enemies just spawning in around you as you go, instead of it being some kind of like, say, I don't want to call it like a campaign mission. It doesn't feel like a campaign mission where they're consistently spawning in certain kinds of things. It's just it's just randomly dropping stuff around you nearby, and it does that all the time. There doesn't seem to be any real variation or just any kind of real structure to it. It just doesn't have that going for it. It's just random. You're just fighting in a similar way all the time. And if you're absolutely desperate for more gameplay, that's great, but it just feels a little bit unpolished as a result. It's not a bad mode. I just find it to be a little bit underwhelming as a result. It does get difficult. You will eventually have something like 10 planes on your ass consistently firing missiles at you. And considering that you start out in a freaking tin can of a plane, it makes it kind of annoying because you need to spend a few missions basically just getting your shit kicked in until you can pick up a plane that isn't terrible, and then the game starts getting fun again. So I would recommend like starting on easy or normal just to get a decent plane, and then putting up the difficulty, because it has the same difficulties that the campaign does: easy, normal, hard, and mercenary. You can also modify a few things about it, like you can modify how fast your alert meter goes up so that it can go up like 3 times in one mission before you've had a chance to breathe. And you can also modify a bunch of other little things about it, like there's a bunch of modifiers which give you, like one example I remember is everybody gets 3 times less ammo. Everything does 3 times the damage, but you get a lot less ammo. There's one where your afterburners are always turned on, so you're always going at maximum speed. There's a couple of things like that, you know, just little tweaks that can go into the game to give you a more intense time. Unfortunately, they don't really improve your odds or disimprove them anyway in Conquest in any way. Like, you don't get a score bonus if you have certain modifiers on. You don't get anything along those lines if you have like the alert level turned up or anything like that either. And the only achievements related to that are, what's the word I'm looking for? The only achievements related to Conquest are how high you can get the alert level and manage to conquer everything. So there's no anything related to that, except for the fact that your score is tracked throughout the entire thing, and when you die, your score is shown on screen, and there isn't even like a high score list. So remember what I said about being undercooked? Yeah, it feels a bit undercooked. Like online leaderboards, multipliers for your modifiers, more structure than just randomly spawning in planes and ground units around you just to keep you interested, and maybe let me start on a better plane that isn't a fucking tin can, and the mode would be a lot better just on the base of it. I'm sure there are a lot more ways you can improve it, like having more structured waves come in, like having more impressive fleets or battles going on, because even when you drop in with like 30 AI units at your back, they'll just tend to circle each other for a long ass time and not really do anything. Like that was a thing about the AI in the Conquest mode. It just doesn't seem to do much. Even when you've got some of the higher capability AI, they just tend to circle each other and not really seem to do much of anything, which is just a little weird. They do act, they do shoot people down, it's just not on the level that I might expect. There's nothing particularly wrong with the mode, at least in my personal opinion. It's just a lot of things that could be improved on. And that's basically it. There are a couple of other things I haven't mentioned, like how there are these files that give you a little bit of extra background into why the world is the way that it is. There's a couple of other things that I'm probably forgetting, but outside of that, would I recommend Project Wingman? Well, after everything I said, and with the way the game looks, you might think to yourself, well, it depends on how much the game costs, because if this was full retail, I wouldn't buy this. This game's $25, United States, so it was like 35 something here. And for that price, absolutely. I'd be more than happy to recommend it. The planes are absolutely great to fly. It looks gorgeous. It has a really engaging campaign mode with great voice acting, good mission design, and a fair amount of general set pieces, and that at-war atmosphere that Ace Combat has been so good at making, that makes this series so appealing over any other arcadey flight sim that I've played in the past. The Conquest mode is at least alright if you just want to go and shoot some dudes. And it's just good. It's really good. And for that price, I'd be happy to recommend it. Not to mention, it's got full virtual reality support. And the day that the virtual desktop maintainer adds support for Project Wingman, I'm going to be replaying the entire campaign in VR because, man, some of these set pieces are great, but it's going to be absolutely glorious to see them all in VR. Maybe I'll even pop the difficulty up to Mercenary and see how I do. Now that I know how to beat the little cheat of a final boss. But yeah, Project Wingman comes highly recommended. I'm looking forward to seeing where they take it. This has been Blue Maxima, and I will see you all next time.